that there is overt, obvious contradiction? For some people it might. But then, there are others who believe that reinterpretation of theology is possible. That in fact one can do allegorical or metaphorical interpretations, and who have had a considerable degree of success in persuading the co-religionists. Since I'm talking about Islam, I will concentrate upon that and perhaps give you just one example. And perhaps the most significant example is that of Sayyid Ahmad Khan, who was a Muslim thinker, born in a very conservative family in India. He was in a family which had a long tradition of religious scholars, and he started out pretty conservative himself. In fact, his first paper was, it's in Urdu and I'm trying to translate it, but the question was, this was written in Tahzibul Akhlaq, if any of you have heard of that series. He posed the question whether it is proper and Islamic for a Muslim to eat mangoes. Now, why shouldn't a Muslim eat mangoes? Well, because the Holy Prophet never ate mangoes, and you're not supposed to do what the Prophet never did. So he cogitated on this problem in a 30-page paper, and he used all the authority of the hadiths on this, and eventually came to the conclusion that it is okay for a Muslim to eat mangoes, but it's much better if he does not eat mangoes, based on the reason that the Prophet had never eaten mangoes. And he said those who do not eat mangoes for that reason, on the day of judgment, the angels will come and lick his feet. So that just tells you where he started out from. But then comes 1857, the revolt against the British, the first war of independence. And he sees the locals being massacred by the Britishers. He sees that a few thousand British troops have just decimated those who have risen up against the colonial powers. And he says, why? And then he starts thinking. He says, it's the power of science. I've got to learn it. I've got to know it. I've got to talk to people about it. That's when he starts his translation effort. That's when he completely changes his thinking. And now, because he was a religious scholar, he was able to make this theological reinterpretation. In a nutshell, that reinterpretation is, he says, look, I believe that the Quran is the word of God, unaltered, perfect, never wrong, but I am also somebody who understands science, and since there's the word of God on this side, and there's scientific truth on this side, well, there can never be a contradiction. He said, if there appears to be a contradiction, then it's a very elaborate procedure. You've got to have patience to go through it. But he says, you've got to go through the etymology of words. You've got to know all the Arabic nuances, the different situations in which the words are used, and so on and so forth. And then you select that interpretation in which the two are not in contradiction. So this is essentially what the Mu'tazila had done 700 years, 1,000 years, 9th century, 8th century, 9th century, early. But on miracles, he was pretty clear. He said, no, it can't be. This is not possible. And this is just God's way of telling stupid people that this happened. So take it symbolically. You can humor those people who believe in it, but you can't take it seriously. Now, that kind of radical reinterpretation of theology has occurred from time to time. Sayyid Ahmad Khan is not the only one. You had, in the Arab world, you had Rashid Rida. Some of that. You had Jamaluddin Afghani, who's a very pragmatic person, very anti-imperialist. He said, let's keep science separate, religion separate. That's managed to have modus operandi over there. So, what I've given to you in my second proposition is that there have been different strands among Muslims, different ways of looking at science. On the one hand, those who literally believe in miracles and the literal truth of what's there in the Quran, and on the others, those who believe that things can be reinterpreted suitably so as to remove the contradiction. Now let me come to my third proposition. I will assert that the state of science among Muslims can change significantly only if science is accepted philosophically. Well, you could say, hey, why is that necessary? After all, isn't it true that the ancient Muslims had done this enormous amount of science, astronomy, medicine, and so forth for a good 400 years? So why do we need a philosophical change? And I'll give you two reasons why I make this assertion. First is that, although it's very seldom mentioned, but those individuals considered as heroes of Muslim science, people like Al-Kindi, Ibn Sina, Al-Razi, Ibn Khaldun, well, those guys had a really tough time with the orthodoxy of their times. If you look at their life histories, they would thrive in certain places where there were liberal khalifas, caliphs, where the court atmosphere allowed peoples of different religions from different parts of the world to come together. But once that disappeared, or once there were theological arguments, then that scholar wouldn't be safe over there. And in fact, practically all the major Muslim scientists, Umar Khayyam, they had a really tough time. But somehow